Okay. So my name is Nicole Mormon. Welcome to those who are here. And I'm the owner of Mindfulness-Based Interventions, and I, through various parts of my business, help people with all kinds of stress, all different kinds of stress, to find clarity, calm, sanity, connection, compassion, so that folks can live those things out in their own lives, and also bring those kinds of qualities into the communities that they're in. And one way I do that is through mindfulness classes and trainings like this one. So this is the mindfulness to reduce stress and meet your life. So glad you guys are here, and also for those who will watch this video later. Today, what I'm going to do is I'm going to talk a little bit about stress. I'm going to talk a little bit about mindfulness and what that is, and then I'm going to go through 3 ways that mindfulness does help with stress. I think there's lots of different ways to talk about how mindful awareness and non-judgmental moment-to-moment attention can help us to meet stress, recognize stress, and then also to take actions both behaviorally and also just like mindset wise and how we approach things in order to reduce stress over the short term, and then certainly over the long term. So I'll talk about 3 ways mindfulness helps reduce stress, and then sprinkled throughout, there'll be some opportunities for those who are here to share a little about your experiences and via the chat, and then also opportunities to practice. I'm going to try to fit in as many opportunities to practice as possible, because one of the things about mindfulness, especially when it comes to reducing stress, because stress is it's just so much a part of our lives, in our bodies, in our relationships, and can really affect our behavior. So mindfulness is great to think about and to talk about and to read about and to know about, but and I think that's beneficial to some degree as far as actually maybe being able to make some changes or shifts, but really the boon of the benefits of mindfulness come with practice, comes with like really that experiential learning, becomes very cumulative, and it's really where the rubber hits the road. Which can be kind of scary, I think just depending on your situation. I know many people that I work with, just this prospect of being more present to some people, it's very attractive, but depending on your circumstance, it also could be something that's really scary or feels impossible. And so if that's the case for you, I just want to say that it doesn't mean if it's scary or if it feels impossible or you feel like you've tried and it hasn't gotten you the results you want or hasn't worked, so to speak, that it's probably not that mindfulness isn't for you. It's probably more a matter of finding the adjustments that fit for your situation and where you're at. There are many circumstances. So we're still learning kind of on the science end of things, and the research end of things. We're still learning about, we know that mindfulness helps with a lot of different issues and problems. And we also know that the way that mindfulness helps with various issues and problems varies, like the mechanism that's actually helping or facilitating the change is likely different for different kinds of issues and problems. So sometimes it's a matter of finding the right adjustments or like the way to practice. I mean, there's so many different ways to practice mindfulness. I would argue there's as many ways to practice mindfulness as there are people in the world and moments and time. And so that's where like really having some guidance, having some support can be really helpful. So just want a quick touch on stress. So when I talk about stress, I'm talking about stress being something that we feel in our bodies primarily. Of course, we have thoughts that can lead into stress. We have thoughts about stress. We kind of have beliefs that we have about different stressors and stress in general. There are the beliefs that we have about ourselves and others in the world that all play into our experience with stress. But when you get really down to it, I always come back to that stress is ultimately, whether you feel the stress first in your body or you eventually feel it in your body, it is something that's really, it always comes back to the body. Our bodies are designed to have stress reactions, whether that's the fight, flight, or freeze response, or it's more subtle in the way of like how we feel emotions, or like having a gut feeling. So always coming back to the body. I want to throw out a definition that I like to work with too, is stress being any time where the perceived resources or the perceived demands outweigh the perceived resources. So, you could think about that in a physical way. When we're starting to get hungry and tired, our resources are getting low, and either the demands are going up or that we're feeling the weight of the demands more because our resources are lower. You could also think about that resources versus demands in an emotional way. If you are dealing with a really heavy emotional load and you don't feel like you have the tools and resources to meet that, then you're going to feel the stress. I'm going to let one more person in here. Okay. So it also could be psychological. You could have demands that, like, ways that your life is demanding your attention, your problem solving, and you may or may not feel you have the resources to meet that moment. So just some ways to think about stress, and I'd love to open it up in the chat. You can also feel free to unmute yourself. But because of the short period of time here, if you can answer in chat, do that. I just would like to hear from you guys about what just a sign of stress in your life or a stressor in your life, just one thing, one sentence. I know it could be so much more than that. But one thing about a sign of stress in your life that led you into signing up to come to this class on mindfulness to reduce stress and meet your life. So Michelle says extreme anxiety, especially at night. Yeah. And I'd say anxiety is a really common one, and we definitely know mindfulness helps with anxiety. There are all different types of anxiety. And so I think sometimes that can affect how mindfulness is helpful or how to weave in the mindfulness. Alexandra, would you or Colleen, would either of you be willing to? Oh, Alexandra says yes, anxiety right now, worry to being a mother and the world and everything. Yeah, there is so much happening in this wider world around us that we're living in, that I think is just collectively, certainly in individual ways, it's affecting us to varying degrees. As far as stress, and then collectively it's being felt so many ways. Colleen, would you be willing to type something into the chat about a stressor or a sign of stress that led you to decide to sign up and show up to the class today? And then I'm just going to speak to just thinking about the folks that I work with, both individually and in the mindfulness-based stress reduction classes and the different kinds of classes that I do. Anxiety is definitely one that comes up a lot. Perfectionism, that drive, that mindset of needing things to be a certain way in order to proceed or to feel okay. Burnout is another common one that I see and I work with, just that exhaustion related to work stress or just general demands, whether that's from work or family or otherwise. Post-traumatic stress disorder, secondary stress, vicarious trauma, so folks who are helpers and caregivers who maybe are exposed to situations where people experience violence or extreme amounts of like helplessness or horror or extreme circumstances where their needs aren't met. I also work a lot with, I call the Energizer Bunny. So doing being a default mode. So almost like doing, like getting busy and being busy as a way to actually respond to or handle stress, which in the short term can work really well. If the stressor is something where it's like, if you can jump in and do some problem solving and get some things done, that it could actually alleviate the stressor. I think about like if company's coming over to the house, okay, I feel some anxiety about that. I go into my doing mode, I clean the house, and then the stressor is gone. My house is clean and I'm ready for the company. That's a really simplified example. But that's an example of how that doing mode, that just like jumping into action and getting busy, checking things off the list, can actually help with stress. But I see it cause a lot of problems and actually end up increasing stress if it's a go-to mode. Like that's your only way or your primary way of like reacting to or responding to stress or trying to handle stress, is like to go into that like being busy mode. Or it could be like so pervasive that you don't even realize it. You just like feel busy all the time and you're not even sure why. So those are just some other examples which may or may not resonate with you guys around some different types of stress that I do work with a lot with individuals and in the mindfulness-based stress reduction classes. The other one that I'd say is medical stuff. I do have quite a number of clients with like chronic medical conditions that have chronic pain or like some chronic like symptom management kind of stuff. And I do work with that a fair amount too. So let's practice. I want to invite everyone. I'll talk about mindfulness a little bit too, but I want to lead with actually practicing it so everybody gets an experience with it. You know, whether this is your first time practicing mindfulness or maybe you've practiced mindfulness many, many times, but an invitation right now to just follow along with my instructions as best you can. So just getting comfortable wherever you are, on the chair, the floor, the couch. And either having your eyes opened or closed, truly whichever one is most comfortable for you. So for some folks, there's a lot of variation here. For some folks, it's whichever's most comfortable and helps decrease distraction. So for some folks, keeping the eyes open is more distracting because of the visual part. And for other folks, closing the eyes is more distracting because of just how that experience feels or what comes up. So choosing whatever's most comfortable for you. We're not looking for anything in particular to happen here, but then finding the sensations of breathing, just how your breath is right now. Seeing where the sensations are most vivid in your body, and then using that place as an anchor point, meaning you're gonna, just for the next like minute or two, you're gonna bring your attention back to where you can feel the sensations of breathing most vividly, whether that's in your nostrils or your throat or chest or belly or someplace else. Allowing your breath to be natural, whatever that is for you right now. You might like note the qualities of your breath right now. Be deep or shallow, free flowing or like tense or obstructed in some way. Could be fast or slow. So, like noting for yourself the qualities of your breath. And no need to change the breath, but certainly if you notice that it'd be helpful for you or you'd like to like deepen the breath or extend, like deepen the inhale or extend the exhale, then feel free to do that for a cycle or two. And then make your way back to the natural breath and just bringing your attention back to the sensations of the natural breath as many times as you need to. So we're not trying to make anything happen here. Just coming back as many times as you need to. And if your mind hasn't wandered yet, then it will. And that's totally normal. So as soon as you notice that your mind's wandered, gently as you can, but firmly, just being willing for just this time to bring your attention back to sensations of breathing. And if for some reason bringing attention to breath is actually more stressful for you, then I'm just going to give a couple other options because I'm going to refer to awareness of breathing or coming back to your anchor point a couple different times. So like choosing an anchor point that is, works best for you, meaning it's available to you and it doesn't cause more distress. So some other options besides awareness of breathing would be bringing attention to the sensations at your feet or seat. Feeling the weight of your body, where you can feel the support of the chair, where you can feel the ground beneath you. Even like taking off shoes and socks can be particularly helpful there to actually feel your feet, the soles of your feet on the floor. Another option is bringing awareness of sounds to the foreground. So like really bringing attention to what's coming in through your ears. And then another option, especially if you're like particularly restless or unsettled, could be to choose a word or phrase that is like calming or soothing for you. So some examples could just be the word calm or breathe. And then you'd use that word or phrase, kind of repeating it to yourself, bringing your attention back to it as many times as you need to. And then now I'm going to move into a second type of practice. So you can either stay with your anchor point, your awareness of breathing, or your chosen anchor point and just practicing coming back to that as many times as you need to and stay with that. And you can certainly come back to it at any time. I'm also going to lead into a mindfulness exercises that brings in the senses more. So if you'd like to move into that one, just continuing to follow the instructions. And so if your eyes are closed, then actually opening them. allowing yourself to visually take in the space around you. So, yes, the computer screen in front of you, but also like behind that screen and um, what's to the side and below you and above you and kind of around your space. This is probably a space for most of us we've been in a million times. So, seeing if you can bring a set of fresh eyes as you visually take in the space around you and see if you can notice one or two um, things, play of light, colors, objects, placement of items. See if you can notice one or two things um, that are different or that you didn't notice before, like when you first sat down. And then we're going to move to the sense of hearing. So bringing sounds into the foreground. And then just noting two or three things you can hear with your ears, kind of naming to yourself. And then you're going to touch in with sense of smell and taste. Just checking in if there's a scent available to your nose and or if there's any tastes in your mouth, lingering in your mouth, maybe something you ate before or maybe just feeling the sensations in your mouth. And then we're just going to move to the sense of touch. So, seeing if you can bring attention to a note or name for yourself, two or three sensations that you can feel on your skin. So, this could be temperature or pressure or places where you feel tingling or itching or numbness, or where your clothes are touching your skin. And then rounding attention back to your chosen anchor point, whether that was sensations of breathing or sounds, or sensations at your feet or seat, or a word or phrase. Not looking for your experience to be any particular way, but just um, coming back to your anchor point, and you can just see how that is for you, like how that feels. If you're finding it easy or difficult or um, pleasant or unpleasant in some way. And then I'd like to open up the chat, so we'll kind of move into more interaction here. Like to invite in the chat, or you can unmute yourself and just say one or two things about how you are now, or just what you noticed during while we were practicing the mindfulness. Okay, and so Alexandra says, I do feel a sense of calm. Could you say, Alexandra, is there like somewhere you can feel the calm in your body right now? My anchor was my chest because I had some small anxieties. And then when I circled back to my breath was much better and I didn't have the ache in my anchor point. Okay, nice. So it's actually where you were bringing the attention to. And then Michelle says, feeling my body and sensations more now. My brain feels calm and focused. Yeah. Okay, cool. Yeah. And the other thing I forgot to kind of bring in earlier when we were talking about stress, I wanted to acknowledge too that, you know, I assume everybody who came to the class has reasons in your life, like parts of your family life or work life that bring, or emotional life that bring you to a class like this, but that also even just like coming to a class like this could bring on some um, feelings of stress, whether that's because it's like dealing with technology or just being with other people or being on camera or just like trying to fit this into a busy day and feeling that kind of crunch from that. Like there are just all these different ways stress could even just be showing up right now. Okay, thank you both. I want to ask, I just want to acknowledge too, Alexandra says, yes, I have family in town. Yes. So I get it. I'm sure you're feeling pulled in so many directions. I'm so glad you made it. And I hope you're finding benefit. Um, what was I going to say? That shoot, I lost it. I totally lost what I was going to say. Something about stress. Um, but I wanted to acknowledge that yes, if calm comes in when you slow down and practice something like awareness of breathing or a meditation, that is wonderful, and it's like you're already getting the benefits right away, or getting some benefits. But I want to be clear that that's not the only benefit of practicing mindfulness, that calm feeling, and I also want to acknowledge that that calm feeling might not come up every time that you practice mindfulness. And for some folks, in fact, it's like feeling like noticing how scattered you are and that being maybe having some tension attached to it, or like how sometimes slowing down can actually bring in sleepiness or tiredness or awareness of exhaustion. And I just want to normalize that that doesn't mean you're doing it wrong. In fact, those are really common like feelings to have when you first start slowing down if you are used to going, or you tend to be wound up really tight, or if in certain situations your tension was really high and then you slow down and your nervous system kind of calms. It's really common to then feel sleepy or tired. Doesn't mean you're doing it wrong. And like I said, with mindfulness, especially with mindfulness to reduce stress, it's really a cumulative thing that benefits like build up over time. It's not just that calm feeling. And I'm so glad that you both are having a like feeling calmer now. We will hopefully have time to do one more practice before 12:30 when the class is over. Quick, I wanted to ask, did you guys have a preference for the awareness of breathing versus the grounding with the senses practices that we just did? If there was a preference either way for either one. And I ask that one because especially if you're getting started with mindfulness, um, really going with whichever practices feel better for you, or that you notice you get immediate benefits from, or they just feel more pleasant. Um, and Alexandra said no preference. So, because the really big thing when you're getting started is just the actually practicing, the remembering to practice and being willing to practice and finding times to practice. So definitely if you're getting started, go with hopefully we're going to get 1 or 2 more practices in here, so you'll have a couple to choose from. Go with the practice that just feels most comfortable and accessible to you as you're getting started. And then, okay, so we're going to bring in a little visualization. So I want to ask you both to think of a time or a place where, just from where you sit now, you'd like to bring in some more mindfulness. So don't think of your most stressful situation, like on a scale of 1 to 10, don't pick your 10. Choose something that you'd rate like a 5 or below, and just take a moment now to imagine yourself in that situation. It doesn't have to be a specific, but just a general, like the place that you would be, who else would be around, if anyone, touching in with like how you would know you were feeling the stress, like how would you feel in your body, like remembering that. And then just right now, imagining yourself recognizing that you're feeling the stress, having awareness of like, oh yeah, that's one of the signs. And then also imagining yourself choosing to bring in the mindfulness practice, so that you're recognizing the stress and you're remembering the mindfulness practice. And then just right now, imagining yourself in that place, feeling the stress, and then choosing to practice awareness of breathing or grounding with your senses. And kind of playing that through like a little movie in your mind. Like in your mind's eye, pairing together, being in the place, feeling the stress, and then remembering to practice the mindfulness, playing that out. And you're not looking, we're not trying to make something happen here. It's practicing pairing together in your mind's eye. And then just letting that image dissolve. And I'm going to just go into some definitions for mindfulness. So my training comes from Jon Kabat-Zinn, kind of through University of Massachusetts Medical Center for Mindfulness. And so I go back to Jon Kabat-Zinn's definition a lot, which is the awareness that arises from paying attention on purpose in the present moment, non-judgmentally. So there's a couple different parts there, and when you're developing mindfulness tools, there are ways to like zero in on those and specifically practice those different parts, like the on purpose, in the present moment, and then non-judgmentally. So that's a part of mindfulness training. And then as you practice more, the goal is where you're linking together moments of mindfulness more often, like linking those moments together, and where you can access kind of all three of those qualities, the on purpose and the present moment, non-judgmentally. But it comes more from like practice and building that muscle, so to speak, rather than like trying to remember all three of those things all of the time. And then another definition I really like to share is from Ellen Langer. She's a researcher out of Harvard, and she started doing her research on mindfulness and awareness and language around the same time that Jon Kabat-Zinn started teaching the mindfulness-based stress reduction at University of Massachusetts Medical Center. And so her definition, I really like because it's so simple. Her definition is noticing new things on purpose. So she kind of gets at that attitudinal part where John Kabat-Zinn uses the term non-judgmentally, which doesn't mean no judgment, by the way. It could be like a more awareness of judgment thoughts, for example, or being aware of when you are being judgmental or someone else is being judgmental. But Ellen Langer gets at this attitudinal part kind of by just implying curiosity with hers, noticing new things on purpose. So kind of two ways, different ways, and there are so many other definitions, but those are my two favorites to work from when thinking about mindfulness. And so it is different than just awareness. I think there's many different ways that we can cultivate awareness. You know, asking questions, accepting feedback from others, watching for nonverbal cues from others, you know, things like journaling and just doing self-education, you know, where we can start to identify with like, oh yeah, I am aware that I do that, or that resonates with me as far as like different personality types or different like ways that we might work with others. So lots of ways to build awareness that I think work really well with mindfulness, but I want to be clear that mindfulness is not awareness only. It's got those other pieces of the attitude, especially the attitudinal part, but also the present moment part of like being willing to come back to present moment awareness over and over again. Okay, so 3 ways that mindfulness helps to reduce stress. I'm going to start with that it grounds us in our bodies. So our bodies are always present. Our bodies are always, that's what bodies do, is they react to what's happening. And so what's happening could be, you know, what's happening around us, what we're taking in visually or like perceiving that's happening around us or to us or like in our environment. And then also what's happening inside, you know, emotions that we're feeling or like things that we're thinking about, memories, images, thoughts, self-talk, all that kind of stuff. Our bodies react to all that. That's what our bodies do, is they like have these different reactions that many of which we can feel. But then of course alongside that feeling a lived experience part is you know, it's physiologically unfolding, you know, what's pumping through our bloodstream, what is our belly digesting, how are our systems working and interacting together, and of course that can create its own sensations or like affect how our body's functioning. And so you might be saying to yourself, especially if you have a lot of discomfort in your body, whether it's because of anxiety or chronic pain or a health condition, you know, you might be thinking, well, I don't want to be in my body. And I totally get that. And there are times where I think it's really wise and smart, intelligent, and really could come from a place of mindfulness to ignore the body or cut off from sensations in the body for short periods of time in really specific situations. But also if it's a default mode where we're ignoring our bodies, or we don't have a good relationship with our bodies, or we're not able to pay attention to the signs and like the wisdom and language of our body, then we miss out on the opportunity of attending to our bodies or attending to the needs that our bodies are like giving us signs that we have. And so coming back to grounding in the body as a way to reduce stress, because the better we're able to take care of our bodies, have a healthy relationship with our bodies, understand the language of our bodies, which takes attention. I mean, you can kind of think of awareness and attention as kind of the way that a way to communicate with the body. we get those opportunities to attend to our bodies, and then it's an easier working relationship, which ultimately helps reduce stress. Not to mention, we're learning so much about how reducing stress has so many positive effects on the body, as far as like reducing risk for certain chronic conditions, um, helping boost the immune system so that we can more quickly recover or more better respond to pathogens or ways that or aging. Even there's a lot of research happening right now on mindfulness' impact on the aging process, and how it may actually be really helpful in slowing the aging process, or just giving us some more resources to reduce some of the negative impacts of aging on the body. So it grounds us in our bodies. Mindfulness grounds us in our bodies, and that helps to reduce stress. Number 2, mindfulness is restorative. So meaning it helps us come back to, it helps us move towards balance and come back to connecting with ourselves. So it's like an alternative to the doing, the thinking, the figuring out, the blaming, the carrying on, like all these different things that we can get caught up in. And I'm not saying any of those things are bad, like the fact that we can think and figure out and problem solve and hold people accountable, I think are all really great, beautiful things about human bodies and brains. And if you're doing and you're figuring out and you're thinking way outweigh how often you are taking the opportunity to be, to rest, to slow down, then eventually you'll start to feel those symptoms of like burnout and exhaustion. Those questions about like, why am I doing this? Losing that sense of purpose. And so mindfulness practice gives us a way to like work that dynamic balance of like doing and making things happen, and then also recovering and restoring, so that we can go back into the doing and the being very engaged and like out in the world, and do that from a place that feels good, that feels in line with our values. And so mindfulness gives us a way to work with these dynamics of balance and find in restoring. I think this is one of the reasons that we look forward to like vacation so much. Hopefully, I suppose this isn't true for everyone all the time, but like often we like vacations because it's a lot more opportunity. Like we have permission, we've set aside the time, we give ourselves permission, we maybe are getting more permission from others to just be, so to speak, do more being. Often because there's less demands at that time. And so a mindfulness practice helps us to build that muscle so that we have more opportunities in the course of a day, even if there's a lot of demands, to work that balance, to bring in some being, even in the midst of a lot of demands or like high stress or even chaos. I will say that bringing mindfulness into those moments in like a sustained way, or like into those environments in a sustained way, often takes a lot of practice, because it's one thing to restore and be able to practice being when you're in a space that's really supportive. It's quiet and you've got a comfortable blanket or chair, maybe there's some guidance, and maybe it's kind of a time that you've set aside. So that's one thing, and that's why we kind of start, where it's quiet and you have the time set aside, but then bringing in the mindfulness into those high demand environments, you kind of start small. And then to sustain that, I have seen, and I guess in my own experience in my practice, it comes with practice, like build up to be able to meet those more difficult moments and bring in mindfulness. So mindfulness helps reduce stress by giving us a way to restore and to help us work the dynamics of that balance of being and doing. And then number 3, mindfulness helps us to reduce stress by giving us a way to notice patterns where we have opportunities for growth. So especially when you start to have a regular mindfulness practice, or you're weaving in even small doses of mindfulness, but consistently over time, um, not only can we notice our areas for growth, but the mindfulness practice can give us like some space, because a lot of times when we notice areas for growth, like self-judgment can come in very quickly, or we just get a little glimpse of it, but we don't fully understand it. And so mindfulness gives us a way, if you practice over time, it gives us a way to be able to get a little distance from it, to see it, have some clarity, see our patterns, our feeling patterns, our thinking patterns, our behavior patterns a little more clearly. And that attitudinal part is so important, that non-judgment, or being able to bring some curiosity, which that in and of itself can be a really powerful tool, that you can build over time. But that allows us, that attitudinal part allows us to get more clarity, get a little more distance, and then also be able to approach those areas for growth, those changes we want to make, or those things that we don't like about ourselves, or that we don't like about our relationships or our work, how we are at work, or to actually be able to have some clarity there and not be really attached to it, and then be able to make some choices, or be able to come up with some creative ways to try to work with it if it's something that we want to change. But I think too, sometimes bringing awareness to patterns or areas, personal areas that we have for growth. Sometimes it's a change process, and sometimes it's a process maybe more of like accepting that that's how it is right now. And I think mindfulness practice cumulatively over time can help us grow that wisdom to be able to tell the difference and come up with a viable way to approach those areas for growth. So third way that mindfulness can help reduce stress is to empower us to be able to have the tools to not only see the areas for growth, but then have some tools for working with areas for personal growth, whether that's, very personal, like emotional or psychological or spiritual, or more like the way we show up in relationships, or the way that we show up in certain environments like work or family, like family of origin stuff. So there you have it, 3 ways that mindfulness can help to reduce stress. I think mindfulness is a really powerful tool just for like slowing down and like feeling that calm, or remembering that we're breathing, even in the middle of like when a lot is going on. And cumulatively over time, practicing mindfulness by yourself or with others, really sets us up for these kinds of insights and tools that we can keep coming back to, and not just keep coming back to, but also tools that we can sharpen, that we can gain more mastery with, as far as the internal resources that we carry around with us. So I want to, okay, we've got just under 10 minutes. I want to come back to a little practice. So I've been talking a lot, and hopefully you guys have been taking that in, may or may not have been resonating with you. And so just an invitation right now for you to turn your attention inward, with an eye out for just like the ripples of what you've been hearing. For you, you might notice like what's been resonating. There might be a word or phrase or a part that was really standing out to you. Or maybe you're feeling more like disengaged or bored or overwhelmed. And so just noticing how it is for you right now, kind of the ripples of what I've been sharing and what it's been like for you to be in this televideo class. You might drop into what you're feeling in your body, whether it's subtle or very clear. Any emotions that you're aware of, again, either subtle or maybe like a memory or something has come up and there's something really strong. So this kind of check in with yourself, meeting yourself right now with your attention, with your awareness. We're not looking for anything in particular here. Our true invitation to just see how it is for you in your mind, body, and heart right now. And then if you'd like to kind of finding your anchor point again, you could choose the same one that you have been using, whether that's breathing or sensations at the feet or seat, or sounds or a word or phrase. Or you could try something different. So this coming back to your anchor point is not to the exclusion of the other parts of your experience. Of course, there are many parts of your experience unfolding right now. Thoughts, sensations, maybe there's sounds, maybe there's literally someone like pulling for your attention right now or calling your name. And absolutely, if there's something you need to do, then doing it. But if not, just working like for just the next like 30 seconds or minute with just a willingness for just this short time right now to come, just to be here, staying still, and then bringing your attention back to your anchor point. This as many times as you need to. And then just one more time, coming back to sensations of breathing or sensations at your feet or seat, or sounds or your word or phrase. I was going to do one more practice, but I think I'm going to stop there since we're in our last 5 minutes. And I just want to recap the practices that we have done today that I really invite you to try to practice on your own. In little small doses, 30 seconds, a minute, a couple minutes, at times that feel doable. So we've done awareness of your anchor point, whether that's the breathing or otherwise. Just that repetition of coming back over and over. We've done the grounding with the senses. So going through each of your 5 senses and noting for yourself like 2 or 3 things that are available to you with each sense. And then the third that we did was the check-in. So just like that briefly turning attention inward and checking in with the ripples, of whatever you've been doing or that's been happening, and checking in with the ripples within yourself in your own mind, body, and heart. That really simple check-in, acknowledging how you are and how you've been affected, whether that's in a really subtle way or a really obvious, clear way, or somewhere in between. That's kind of like checking in, like if you can imagine how you might want a friend to check in with you. That's like kind of offering that same kind of check-in to yourself as regularly as really as possible. We know that that's a really important part of health, well-being and health, is that checking in with how you're doing. So the really strong invitation to weave those in on your own in really small doses. Let's see. I was going to do one more activity with a self-care plan, but I tried to fit in too much, so we're not going to do that. I think I'm just going to speak to, if you enjoyed this class, if any of it resonated with you, or this prospect of just integrating mindfulness into your life even more is, something you're interested in. Really, my ask is that we stay in touch. And I do have a monthly email newsletter. And so if any of this is interesting to you, I'd love to stay in touch via the email newsletter. I'm making a lot of changes right now. I'm in the middle of changing my website and getting an e-course online, which I'm going to be offering for free to folks who, offering for free in a pilot for folks who are interested in trying out the mindfulness e-course, and in exchange for some really robust, honest feedback from folks, so I can make that class as accessible and valuable as possible. So I'll be posting soon in the next month on my website. I'll have a way people can sign up to be a part of that pilot and take the class for free. I will be offering, as I have been for the last couple years, a 8-week full, the evidence-based, mindfulness-based stress reduction course, which is a deep dive into mindfulness and integrating it into your life. That doesn't start until mid-January. I've done that for the last 3 years with a lot of great feedback. It'll be online this year because of the COVID. So just a couple things that are coming up in my world, and I'd love to stay in touch. So I just ask that you join my email newsletter list. You can do that by typing your email in the chat box, and I can add you that way, and then you'll just get a confirmation email. Or you can join via my website, and there'll be a link in the follow-up email with the recording of this class too. So I'll be on here for just a couple minutes afterwards if you guys have any questions. And thanks for coming, and take really good care.